Hello again, I'm Corey Amsler, and welcome to another segment of 100 Years, 100 Objects, a Mercer Centennial Moment. Today we're talking about architectural hardware. Throughout the colonial era, most of the hardware used in American buildings was actually imported from England, the product of English metalsmiths organized into highly specialized trades. Now, while certain kinds of simple hardware forms, strap hinges, some types of latches, might be produced by general blacksmiths working on this side of the Atlantic. More sophisticated hardware forms like locks and spring latches and other types of hinges really required the singular skills, training, and expertise of the English smiths. In 18th century England, small hardware shops and the craftspeople that operated them functioned as part of a larger system of sort of quasi-mass production. Though they still produced their work primarily by hand, each of these shops tended to specialize in producing a particular type of hardware, a certain type of lock, a certain type of latch, a certain type of hinge, for example. Essentially, they did one thing repetitively, very efficiently, and became very, very good at it. Some shops would break things down even further and produce nothing more than a component over and over again for a particular piece of hardware, like brass doorknobs. Ultimately, these workers sold their products to merchants who marketed them at home and abroad to satisfy a burgeoning demand for architectural hardware in the era. Now, the English hardware industry was centralized in the so-called Midlands, particularly in the towns of Wolverhampton, Willenhall, and Bilston in Staffordshire. In fact, all of the hardware that you see on the table here was likely produced in England and very likely in the Midlands, including things like wrought iron thumb latches, or iron hinges, so-called HL hinges that were the typical door hinge of the 18th century. One particular piece in the Mercer collection we know to have been produced in the Midlands, and particularly in the town of Willenhall, is this square plate spring latch. We know that because it's actually marked by its maker, William Bratt. It's very, very rare to find a piece of architectural hardware from this period that's marked, but members of the Bratt family did, for whatever reason, choose to mark some of their pieces. And other members of the Bratt family, in addition to William, are listed in the 1770 Willenhall directory. He's listed as a so-called toy maker and hardware man. Other Bratts are identified with other types of hardware forms. And in that directory generally are individuals who are named as spring latch makers, who might be making square plate spring latches, or so-called keyhole plate spring latches, incorporating brass components that would have been produced by yet another shop, or another specialization, rim lock maker, the typical surface-mounted door lock of the period, in this case a brass-cased version of a rim lock. Now, in early America, the demand for housing and other structures created a new and expanded market and the need for metal hardware in great quantity. These English smiths, these specialized craftspeople working in a rationalized system of production, albeit predating large-scale mechanization, interchangeable parts, or centralized factories, those things that ultimately would characterize the Industrial Revolution, these smiths nonetheless produced much of the hardware used in America in our formative period. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Corey Amsler. This has been another Mercer Centennial Moment, and we'll see you next time.